To order this October 6th meeting of the Community Development Committee. We have all members present. We have two orders of business before us. The discussion of the Nair property, the Reliant Medical proposed business at Ross and Section Avenue, and an update on the Ellesmere Community Garden Park at the corner of Ellesmere and Williams. Wanted to start with the Reliant Medical proposal. We've received a nice printout, a couple of them in the audience for people that want to look, and invite the representatives to sit over at one of the microphones and proceed with your presentation. Give us your name, who you're with, and present away.
Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Rusty Myers. I'm with JLL, and we represent Reliant Hospital Partners and have represented them as they've looked for sites here in Cincinnati. And I think you all have the package in front of you that describes the project in detail. Just as a real quick overview, Reliant basically specializes in rehabilitation hospitals. Their focus is post-surgical, stroke, any type of medical rehabilitation post-acute. So the goal is they'll bring the patients in with intense rehab and therapy over whatever period of time it takes. They will then be discharged back home or to another assisted facility. So average length of stay is anywhere from 3 days to a couple weeks typically for their rehabilitation services. They have 14 around the country, and the investment in the facilities are roughly $15 million at the end of the day. And again, they have 14 all throughout the country.
This will be your first one in this area?
This will be the first in Cincinnati, and they do just one per market. And really what they do, they'll team up with the different medical practices and groups around the city. So they'll have an affiliation or alliance with the Mercy Group, TriHealth, UC Health. So once they're discharged from the hospitals or once they've had their surgery, they'll go to the Reliant Hospital for rehab.
Okay.
So from the plans, you can see they're doing a 40-bed facility with the ability to expand by 8, and on roughly 4.5 acres at the corner section in Ross. They have, the way they design the facility, they have the rehabilitation area adjacent to an outdoor courtyard so the patients can basically enjoy the outdoors while they're rehabbing, and then they'll have some rehabilitation outside when weather permits. Also within kind of the patient room areas, they have a big, really open gathering area where they encourage the patients to come out, mingle, meet with families, so they have a really nice open area along with the patient room areas, which shows up on the plan. So total employment within the facility is roughly 100 full-time equivalent employees. They really will employ about 150 at the end of the day in the facility, but some are part-time. And then really estimated payroll is about $6 million annually in the facility. And I guess the only other piece of information, revenues roughly are $14 million a year once they're stabilized and occupied and open at the end of the day.
Are you, you're not affiliated with any existing, the company Reliant is with
No.
any existing Cincinnati-based hospital as such?
No, they're actually based out of Dallas, Reliant is. And then the developer for them, the Sanders Trust, is out of Birmingham, Alabama. And they've done this will be their third facility that they've done for Reliant.
And to be clear, anybody else jump in, but to be clear, when, as I'm sure maybe more than a few of us heard, we heard a rehab, and of course, the immediate thought is, drug and alcohol rehab
Yeah.
or something, but absolutely.
Absolutely
100%.
not, 100% not. No, this is all medical post-acute rehab, so
Right.
stroke victims, hip replacement, knee replacement,
unlike-
accident,
And
those
unlike
types of
Drake
things.
Center, you don't do long-term or anything
No.
like that.
No, this is, I'll call it kind of intermediate care, so if you have a knee replacement, you'll come here so you can rehab for 2, 3, 4 days, whatever it takes to get back home and continue the
Do you do
rehab.
outpatient also, or strictly resident,
It's all inpatient.
inpatient?
You said post-surgery rehabilitation.
Post-surgical or post-acute. If somebody's in the hospital, like say for a stroke, once they're able to then go to the rehab side, they will be discharged to the hospital.
I didn't know if, for details, I know this has been in front of the zoning board of appeals, and that was
Planning-
late last week, was it?
Planning Commission. was
Planning Commission,
Thursday.
sorry. I honestly haven't received any word of how that
We were approved unanimously.
approved. Okay, so we'll hear about that for the council meeting next week, or no, next week, yes. This is one of our 2-week council vacations. Anything else about the property itself that needs to be discussed in terms of what did it need any remediation, or was there anything?
Yeah, actually Jeff Shamit from Nyer is here, and this is a property that was remediated, and Jeff can certainly answer the history and
If you wanna give
give
us
you a
your-
little background on the site
Give us
itself.
your full name and who you're with.
Jeff Shamit with Nyer Properties. Rusty told you a lot about the project. We're the current landowner, and yeah, it's been a great partnership with the City of Norwood, because there's 2 separate properties, the old Norco property and then the old American Laundry property, which we went out in partnership with the city and received 2 separate Clean Ohio grants. So really, we've been working with Jerry and with the city for 4 or 5 years to get to the point where we are today, and this project is really the culmination of that partnership. So we appreciate everything the city has done through that process, because without those grants, the property wouldn't be developed right now, or be developing right now.
As far as the site goes, what he said is it's ready to go. Is there anything left to as far as the development, starting the development, or is?
As far as the remediation is concerned, the no further action letter has been issued on the site, so it's clean. So that process is completed, and actually through the grant process, some grading and some other work can be done, so it's more or less pad ready for them to begin. And I know they're anxious to get started probably later this year.
Right.
What is your estimated time of construction from start to finish?
Our hope is to get started, as Jeff said, either November, December, with some site work, and as you know, winters around here are a little touch and go. So our hope is to get in the ground before winter really hits, and then probably a 9-month build, 9-month construction.
Jeff, does this, and looking at the information we've been given, does this use of the property cover the entire lot of what Nyer owned from those 2 properties that you described?
No, this use would cover more or less the eastern half of the site, so it would leave us about another 5-acre, 4.5, 5-acre parcel for development.
As opposed to, how much acreage again was this? This
This project is about 4.5.
Okay, so
Yeah.
roughly the same.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question for Chris or Greg, who worked last year on our form-based code, and just wanted to get any insight, comments that you guys would have in relation to this site and the form-based code.
Where it does not meet the form-based code specifically, in reference to the building fronting along the street,
Okay.
because of the use that Reliant has and the way the flow of traffic in and out. That was where we sort of had a little leeway on that, and because of adjoining uses, it's already in that kind of that commercial section, I mean, the part that is bordering the residential section over there it does kind of comply closer with that, but the other sections that abut right to sort of the Norwood lateral and the other parts had a little give there. They do have all the landscape requirements that we have along there, so if you see the decorative
Yeah.
in the back rendering
Yeah, and this elevation is,
along there, we thought that went a fairly long way to alleviate some of the concerns.
and this elevation is section and Ross, is that correct?
Yes.
So, Chris, did you want to, I mean, you guys,
No, I think that it is in a PUD. It was put in place prior to the
Right.
zoning amendments.
okay, that's what I couldn't remember.
Yes. And the PUD process does allow for
Yep.
modifications of the zoning requirements. It is a permitted use in that area. It did receive the recommendation from the planning commission
Right.
to approve. And also, given the nature of its use as the rehab facility, there are certain requirements that they have to meet.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, I want to thank you, of course, for bringing this opportunity to Norwood. It's, I know there was a lot of concern over the last 10 years about that property and that whole corner of town, and it's great to see, people chuckle a bit at the influx of medical-related businesses, but if the term recession-proof can be applied and learned in the last 6 years to the medical business, bring them on, as far as I'm concerned. Thank you very much, John.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that.
All right, next order of business is discussion of the Ellesmere Community Garden Park at the corner of Ellesmere and Williams. You both want to come up and give us a little update? My assumption is we're looking at some revisions here. You want to give us some background? And
Mr. Chairman, before we begin on the Williams and Ellesmere Garden, I believe that there's an application for the CRA, and under our CRA ordinance, this committee has to make a recommendation to council in terms of recommending that the council proceed with the adoption of the CRA ordinance and authorize the agreement.
Typically, are they going to have some numbers together? Because typically we see the application prior.
Yes, they provided an application. I believe Jerry has that.
Okay.
That should have been forwarded to you already if it has not. The application is pretty much the same as what he had just called. I do apologize for, it is a 49%. They're asking for a 49% tax abatement. The jobs are 100 jobs, payroll $6 million, and facility will be $15 million. So they are, and that'll be $15 million plus or minus depending on grading of the property. So what they are asking is to have a recommendation to City Council for a 49% tax abatement. And if you did not get those in your packets, I do apologize, they were sent.
Okay, and theirs would be for 15 years,
That's correct. It's
Okay.
new construction.
Well, yeah, and it's above 250, so that is usually triggers it, right?
Correct. The CRA requirements is a $250,000 investment. This will exceed that requirement. The job requirement, we don't have a requirement per se, but we do look for projects that include a hefty payroll for our payroll taxes. And the 49% abatement will be on the approved value, not the historic value.
all right. Is there a motion on the floor to, well, let me, so you would recommend passage of this?
What the committee would do is they would make in their report, a recommendation that council approve the ordinance authorizing the CRA agreement.
Okay, and that is something I should take a vote on here, or just put it?
Yes, I would take a
Okay.
vote on that.
Is there a motion on the floor to accept the CRA report and, sorry, go ahead.
Just to be clear, you're asking for a recommendation to bring to council for a 49% tax abatement for payroll taxes or for building, for both, or
Not for payroll,
It's just on property.
just on the property.
just on the property?
Correct.
Property taxes?
That's right.
For how many years?
15.
15 years. Okay.
And the payroll will be at our standard
2%.
2%.
That's
Okay.
right. And they also have, we have a corporate tax of 2%, so
Right.
that stays intact.
Okay.
Right. And like Chris was saying, it's after, it's the appraised value once it's completed.
Correct. There's going to be a historic value of what it's being taxed at now, and then there will be a appraised value, which will increase the value that it's taxable, but they are only going to pay 49% on the increased tax.
Any other questions?
And then this will go to council probably at your October 14th meeting, where then you can vote to authorize the mayor or safety service director to enter into a CRA agreement with the applicant. And then after that agreement, they'll have to record the agreement at the county, and then there should notice the abatement on their next tax rolls once the improvements are finished.
Anybody else? Okay, I will put a motion on the floor to accept the CRA and recommend it to council for passage. Second by Mr. Breeden. I guess I'm the one supposed to be writing this down, right? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very good. Anything else on this that we need to know about? Okay. Thank you. All right. Let's talk gardens.
Sure. Greg Oros, our planning contractor, have revised plans for you, and I'll let him walk you through. And then I have some information that Ms. Sickinger wanted to pass on to the board after Greg walks you through the new revised plans.
Okay, the revised plan in front of you is based on the public input that was received, last planning commission 2 months ago. A lot of the concerns were a little bit of screening from the neighbors adjacent, especially along Williams Avenue and as well as Ellesmere. What I did is I worked with Mrs. Sickinger on the layout to make sure that it still met kind of her desires, but also took into account all of that public input that we had. It even, during this process, went one step further into a little larger garden, and I think after the tree board review and looking at it, I think we decided to do the initial sort of gardens towards the back, similar to the first revision on it, and then kind of beef up the front with a little bit more of plantings. So what we've done is, I'm not sure, the Ramada was just at that point getting discussed and talked about, so there is a Ramada, almost like a pergola type structure that's going to be in the middle, and that's actually, they have the footers in, and I think the rest of the construction is going to go on this weekend. They did get a whole load of topsoil delivered to the site, so 20 yards or so over the whole site, and then they regraded the whole site as well. So using the topsoil plus the existing material to level out the site slightly. The way the gardens are laid out, they're not a whole lot different. They're a little bit more vertical as opposed to the horizontal layout that we had. I did leave a little bit of flexibility that, let's say this was wildly popular and they needed more rooms for the garden. The way that it's established right now, the lawn area that's in the center could be established into more raised garden beds. But what we felt on the lawn area that was there is a good compromise for maintenance, initial maintenance. A lot of times what you see is with these community gardens is they almost go too big at first or very big, and the maintenance becomes almost a maintenance nightmare because of the fact that you're eating the food that's produced there. You can't use chemicals or anything like that, so weeds tend to be a bit of an issue. So that's why we really pushed that lawn area in the middle to be a walking surface and just a way to to manage the site a little bit more. So the main maintenance will be that primary bed that's along Williams Avenue, and then the bed that's along the garden sort of bed that's along the back side of the property. And then their little gathering area is also grass as well. So we're having them get the seed and the straw on that grass coming up here this weekend because we're running out of time with that. And I think they just got a grant, which Chris can explain a little further, to build the garden beds it's called Bedford stone. It's like an Allenbach product, but it's a softer stone. It's kind of a rounded sort of stone on there and lays up almost like a natural stone. And so it'll be complementary to the wall that's there, but actually a little softer than the wall there. So it'll be a nice mix in there. So that the grant allowed them to do that because that's a pretty decent sized cost for that material. So that grant was helpful.
And speaking of the grant, it was a $7,000 grant from Interact for Health. It is a Norwood-based organization. And with that grant money, Jeannie and the other neighbors and volunteers will be constructing the Ramada this weekend, the raised beds. They will be purchasing the sign. Greg and I will be working with her to make sure that the sign fits within the character of the city. And also we would suggest to her that she brings that back for your review, but we'll talk to her about the sign. But there will be a temporary sign for the farmers market, which will be held October 18th. That will be a very busy day in the city of Norwood because it'll also be the Norwood Promise Diploma Dash, which will start at 8 o'clock at Shea Stadium for registration. The race will start at 9:30. And then the community garden will begin at 10:30 down on Ellesmere.
Good plug.
Thank you. And also in terms of the grant, it'll basically allow for most of the hardscape that's going to be in the park. The tree board will be providing the plantings.
Yes. So-
Greg is going to be picking out the plantings with the tree board. And there will be a small retention wall built by the raised beds here in that 11-foot wide section there. So that'll match the retaining wall that's along Williams. So what they're going to hopefully do is by next year, all they will have to do is fill the beds with dirt to plant the vegetables and the other corn and other products that they're going to be planting in their beds, and then the teepees. So pretty much by the end of October or November, this garden will be about 80% completed and ready for the initial kickoff in spring of 2015.
Yeah, so the tree board's been actually very busy the end part of this year. This is one of about 4 projects that we're looking to do. What we're hoping we're sent bids out for both installation and also a bid for just the plant material getting delivered. And I think we might do the plant material delivered and sort of organize it as a volunteer event, because we feel that ties the people in general, the community, to the garden, and I'll help organize that and lay out all the plants and things like that. And that could also increase the time. She wants to get it done before the 18th, and that might make it just in the nick of time to be able to do that. So, and then the tree board has also sent out bids for Park Avenue as well. So both sections, I think it'll be island, what I call Island 2 and then Island 3. We've already done the first island. We're thinking of Island 2 for this year, and we're hopefully looking for corporate bids or corporate contributions for Island 3. We just have to see how that works out. We've also sent out bids for Victory Park just to clean up the front, just some open the park up a little bit. We had seen an old historic photo of it, and it really just had grass along where the monument was, and it was much cleaner. It had a nice look. It just was, the park was more open. Also, the street trees are ash trees, so they're well on their way out. So a bid to pretty much take out all the street trees, put new trees back in, and just pretty much clear and grass the front of Victory to kind of open the park up. So we hope that that's the first sort of bare minimum stage of getting the park back together. And also the last one is Quatman has been doing a lot of work on the Northern Gateway, and one of the areas we want to add some interest too is that northern gateway, and they're plugging away on that. So we hope to help with some street trees and different landscaping up in their project as well.
And,
busy.
and this weekend is the October 11th and 12th. There will be a event down at the park where volunteers can come in and help with the planting beds and the seeding and strawing. So anybody interested in helping with the park or garden are encouraged to come down October 11th or October 12th.
Any rough timetable on that?
We were not given a rough time. I would say probably if you come around 10, that should
10
be,
a.m.
yeah.
Put that up on the Facebook page.
Just out of curiosity, these raised beds here, I see, what are the circles with the X's in them?
Those are planting teepees. They're basically wood staffs set up in a teepee so that allows for climbing vegetables or climbing plants to grow up around them. So they are roughly marked out in those locations.
Okay.
They're fairly low profile. I mean, I bet
So-
from the road, you'd be hard pressed to see them until the plants are actually growing up. You could picture
So just to be clear, it's basically a round raised bed?
No.
it's more like picture coming out in sticks, kind of four
Okay.
sticks coming and meeting
Oh, okay.
in the center,
Just
just,
on the
just so
ground.
they can,
Okay, okay.
yeah, your
Yeah,
tripod.
it's very similar to that tripod.
Okay.
So imagine a tripod set up so that climbing plants can grow up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right, but as opposed to the rectangle shown here,
Okay.
which would be raised.
Yeah, those would
these-
actually
the
be,
teepees would be,
yeah, I know
on
the
the
teepees
ground.
look more substantial on there than I think they are. There'd be ones that you literally
No, this one.
you could remove or take out at your leisure. I don't see them being a long-term
Okay.
physical structure
and I'm
like
going to
the
speak
raised
for the other
beds.
98%. And what is a ramada?
A ramada, I know, and I had actually not even heard the term. Is more of we call them a pergola.
Okay,
Is pretty much.
Oh, you
It's a
did mention
pergola that has seating underneath it.
okay.
So there's going to be a little bench seat that's underneath it, but I typically refer as a pergola.
Okay.
It's sort of a very open air gazebo. The building itself will have 4 posts and it'll support like a gable roof that'll be open. And they have a small cupola which they're going to hang a wind chime
Hmm.
in, and then there'll be seating underneath.
I think the big difference is it has a roof.
Yep.
Very good. And I know the question's been asked before, but I'm still getting people asking me, and I'm not entirely sure. But for example, with all the extensive work that would be done right along the sidewalk and all the plantings of the lavenders and the black-eyed Susans and the phlox and lamb's ears, maintenance of those on an ongoing basis will be the responsibility of,
The community volunteers.
okay,
Yep. And then I forgot to mention too, we do have the larger tree on the corner, which was a very specific request as well. So that's a tulip poplar, which can grow into a larger tree. And then we did try to make them as such that the maintenance should be, I designed it so that it's not going to be a horrible maintenance. I try to put plants that are relatively easy to take care of. For the first, besides getting some weeds out and things like that, for the first couple of years, you should have minimal maintenance. And then I even had some lower plants in there that should grow together, what I call massing, as a mass, and that even further prevents weeds. So the idea is that the plants do somewhat meet up to each other a little bit, with the shrubs being somewhat separate, but we have a lot of years of growth until they meet each other, and then even when they do meet each other, it actually will just create more of a solid screen in there. So it'll just be a couple years of making sure the weeds aren't there, and then after that, it's kind of the basic pruning that you can do once to twice a year. So it shouldn't be overwhelming.
has the tree board weighed in on that
Yeah,
aspect of this?
no, not of the aspect of the maintenance, just the concern of it that it will be, and I think that's why you see the design that we have, that where the longest section is the landscaping in front and the garden section is the size and scale that you see, is because of the maintenance issue. Doing this quite a bit myself, I break things down into beds, and if you have too many long continuous beds or one huge area, which was one proposal had about a 40 by 60 sort of foot bed, and those are the ones that get away from you. If that grass in the middle there, as much as it just looks like it's sort of floating there, and is the key component that will help break it into sections that are manageable, Because you can come in one time and say, we're going to take care of the beds, the garden beds one time, and then we're going to take care of the sort of front landscape bed. Instead of that being a whole monolithic, that garden and the landscaping being combined right there makes it more manageable.
And cutting the grass is,
I think that'll be a local,
that'll be local also,
local
not
community.
city.
Yes, what we seem to be blessed on this is that the neighbors right next door to them who own the next two houses down.
Just moved in, too, yeah.
Just moved in. They're very enthusiastic. They were out there when the soil was getting delivered and the son was loving the truck and all of that. So, I mean, I think between Jeannie and themselves, that they're just going to add that into their normal repertoire of sort of almost an extension of their maintenance that they have on their houses.
And to also applaud the neighbor, they purchased the house that was directly next door to them between the park and their house, renovated it, and they will be installing a nice fence along the southern boundary of the park between their property and the park. So we don't have to pay for any of the fencing. It's going to be a nice, they call it a country fence, which will have posts and rails. So they're gonna take care of their property and sort of tie it into this park. So we're very fortunate that they were able to purchase that property and bring it back up to productive standards.
And they even, as so far as to, remember there's grasses initially in the plan that kind of cut in the lower section near the property borders. Those grasses have been moved, I believe, to their property to make more space for the garden, so that they didn't have to use the garden space or the park space for kind of that screen that we were hoping to get with those grasses. Where the fence ends, because the fence can only go a certain distance because of the zoning code.
Okay. And I guess the surprise here is how much you plan on having done yet this year. I had, for some reason, thought last discussion was that we really wouldn't see it kick in till next spring, but
I think that grant helped accelerate it, yep.
And the tree board, their willingness to work with that and volunteers.
That's
So, I
good.
mean, they're really stretching their, the grants are only going to be really covering the materials. All the rest is the volunteer labor hours, and that really almost doubles your investment.
all right. Any other questions?
I guess so, for anyone that's just watching, or, you know, we're looking at a community garden that's funded with grants, no city money so far. We're looking at no public work maintenance, community, surrounding communities for the, you know, the grass and the upkeep. So
Yep.
far, that's, you know, for anyone that's watching.
And worst comes to worst, let's say there is a maintenance issue with it. We're not talking the size and scale of the park here. It's a true pocket park. If the maintenance division or of the city needed to get involved at some point for any mowing or even for a general weed control or something into that nature, we're talking minimal time. I mean, they could come in a day, 2 people, once a year and make quite an impact on the park. So
That's a good point.
And the city's only contribution to this is the land itself, to basically allowing them the opportunity to build these structures and to do the plantings and all the other improvements.
and the use of tree board or
And the use
funds,
of tree-
which
and the
is
tree board.
grant funds as well to the city, community block grants.
And to those with whom we've had the discussion about, well, why don't they just build a new house in there? Explain again what the difficulty with this property would be in putting a new living structure in it.
The first difficulty would be the width of the lot itself. It is a narrow lot. There could be a house built, but right now, 2014, the market would not support finding a developer to purchase the property, construct a house that would contribute to the neighborhood, and then sell it. Hopefully that'll change in the next couple months, but right now, there's just not a market for a single-family home at that property. Plus this was a neighborhood-driven initiative. This was individuals who recognized that there was a house there that was going to be torn down, and they approached the city and say, hey, can the city allow us the opportunity to create this community garden, this community park? and recognizing that initiative of the surrounding neighbors and spearheaded primarily by Jenny Sickinger, but other neighbors of the community approaching the city and saying, we want to take responsibility and take action. I think that in and of itself is a reason to encourage that type of spirit and encourage that type of community involvement. There will be other lots for other houses.
Yeah. Very good. Any other questions?
Agreed.
Yes. Very good. Thank you very much.
thank you.
And like you say, things are going to be, for folks listening, and things are going to be starting to happen pretty quickly up there, it sounds like. and
Absolutely,
People
yeah.
keep, and again, it's this weekend.
This weekend, October 11th and 12th is
Come on by
the,
at 10 o'clock. And,
Yep, help-
and
help
I'm
out.
sure they'll find something for you to do.
Mhm.
Very good. Thank you very much. All right, I believe that covers our agenda items. Was there anything else that anybody needed to pipe in with? All right, well, if that's the case, I will call this committee to a close and do a quick report. Thank you all for joining us, and have a good evening.